At my daughter's wedding, I was shoved into the kitchen, ignored and forgotten. After everything I sacrificed for her, that's where I was left. Then, she had the nerve to tell me I was too much drama. That's when I snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't beg for attention. I bought the venue, canceled everything. Flowers, food, music. I let her and her perfect day crumble. I'd been invisible long enough. Now it was my turn to make them feel the weight of their choices. My name is Margaret Daniels, and I'm 58 years old. I live in a small suburban town in Pennsylvania, the kind where everyone knows your name, or at least your business. I've spent most of my life making sure others were happy, comfortable, and well cared for. You could say I've been the glue that held things together, a mother, a wife, a daughter. But lately, I've been asking myself if anyone's been holding me together. I guess it's time to find out. I stood in front of my daughter's wedding venue, hands clasped tightly in front of me, trying to steady my breath. The place was a spectacle. White marble floors, towering arrangements of flowers, roses, lilies, and orchids, the kinds of flowers you see in magazines, but never in real life. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, refracting the soft golden light onto the polished surface, making everything feel like a dream. But dreams, I've learned, often come with a hefty price tag, and I've been paying for them, literally. For a year, I've worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure every last detail of this wedding went off without a hitch. Every penny I could scrape together went toward making sure my daughter, Emily, had the fairy tale she wanted. I'd seen her dreams evolve over the years, and each time she spoke about them, her eyes would light up with this vibrant energy, this belief that nothing was impossible. I wanted to believe that too. I wanted to feel like I was part of something grand, something that mattered to her. But as the wedding day drew nearer, I couldn't help but feel like I was being pushed farther and farther into the background. It wasn't that Emily was a bad person. No, she was a good girl, always polite, always respectful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the life I had built around her wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to just be her mother anymore. I had become the provider, the problem solver, the one who made everything possible, but the one who disappeared when the photo was taken. It's funny how you can give someone everything you have and still feel invisible, like you're not even part of the picture. The wedding itself was supposed to be my moment. It was supposed to be the culmination of everything I'd done for Emily, the one time I could be proud of the sacrifices I'd made, but it felt more like a performance, one where I wasn't even given a proper seat. I tried not to let it show, though, tried to keep the smile plastered on my face as I greeted guests, helped with last-minute details, and nodded along as Emily's friends fawned over her. But inside, it was a different story. I had paid for everything, every flower, every chair, every meal. Yet, when it came time for the ceremony, I wasn't even in the program. There was no mention of me, no nod to the fact that I had been the one to hold this family together, to make sure the wheels kept turning, even when everything else fell apart. Emily's father was there, of course. He had come in for the day, grinning from ear to ear as if he'd been an active part of her life. His presence didn't bother me. What bothered me was the way Emily's face lit up every time he spoke. She was his daughter, his princess. And in this moment, I was nothing more than the woman who paid for everything and got nothing in return. But I couldn't let it show. No, I had to smile and hold my head high because it was Emily's day, not mine. And if I ruined it, then I would be the one who was wrong. But something inside me snapped when I found my seat. A folding chair, of course. No fancy seat with a nameplate or anything. Just a cheap metal chair with a paper napkin tossed over it. It was placed behind a cluster of used trays, next to a broken cart that squeaked with every turn. I blinked hard, trying to adjust to the reality of it. No sign of respect, no acknowledgement. Just a seat in the back, out of sight. My fingers trembled as I clutched my purse. I wanted to say something, anything. I wanted to scream at the injustice of it, but I didn't. I stayed quiet, kept my tears behind a carefully maintained mask. because that's what I had done for the last 25 years. I'd stayed quiet. I looked down at my dress, the one I'd chosen for the occasion, a soft mauve chiffon, hand-stitched with love. It was a far cry from the dress Emily had worn, the one that was 4 times the price of mine. I had spent 3 hours getting my hair done that morning, 3 hours trying to pretend that this day would be as special for me as it was for her. But as I sat there, alone and forgotten, I realized that it never was about me. Not once had anyone bothered to ask what I needed or wanted. All my energy had been spent trying to make Emily's dreams come true, and in return, I was given a folding chair behind a swinging kitchen door. My heart felt heavy, like it was sinking into the pit of my stomach. The clink of glasses and the soft hum of the band from the other room seemed distant, like it belonged to a different world. The wedding wasn't for me. It never was, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending. I sat there for what felt like hours, watching my daughter spin and laugh in the center of the dance floor, completely unaware of the sharp pain I felt in my chest. She looked so happy, so radiant, like she was living in some kind of fantasy. And I had spent the last year helping her build that fantasy, every step of the way. The flowers, the photographer, the venue. It had all been my doing. But here I was, forgotten. The woman who had sacrificed everything for her child was nothing more than a shadow in the background. I wasn't a part of her fairy tale. I was a ghost. The worst part was that I had never questioned it. I had always been there for Emily, never asking for anything in return. It wasn't even about the money, although that stung. It was about the years I'd spent putting myself aside for her, watching her grow, but never once feeling truly seen. I glanced at the table next to me, where the half-eaten shrimp cocktail and a stale bread roll sat, untouched. It had been placed in front of me with such casual indifference, like an afterthought. A guest had taken a bite, then moved on, leaving me to eat the scraps. My stomach twisted, but I didn't touch it. I couldn't. I could hear Emily's laughter from the other side of the kitchen door, mingled with the sound of glasses clinking and the music playing. The band was playing her favorite song, a slow ballad. Her new husband Thomas held her close, and for a fleeting moment, I saw her smile widen, glowing like she was the center of the universe. And she was. She was the star of the show, the centerpiece of every conversation, every toast, every laugh. She deserved it. But in that moment, something inside me broke. I tried to look away to focus on the cracks in the walls, the chipped paint, the flickering lights in the dim corner of the kitchen, but nothing could block out the rising feeling in my chest. It wasn't jealousy. Not really. It was something deeper. It was the realization that I had given my whole life to this moment, only to be cast aside like an extra in a movie no one cared to watch. I could feel the tears threatening to spill, but I didn't let them. I told myself over and over that I wasn't going to ruin this for her. It was Emily's day. She had everything she wanted. She had the dress, the venue, the perfect groom. She had it all. But why hadn't she thought about me? Why hadn't she cared about the one person who had done everything for her? I sat up straighter, my hands clenched tightly in my lap. I had done enough. I had given everything, and still, I was made to feel like an afterthought. The betrayal stung more than I could have imagined, and I realized that in that moment, I was done. I reached for my purse. My fingers felt numb, but I couldn't stop. I had already made up my mind. This wasn't about punishing Emily or making her regret her actions. This was about me. It was about reclaiming what was mine, my dignity, my sense of self, and my power. Without thinking twice, I pulled my phone from my bag and dialed the wedding coordinator's number. My voice was steady when she answered, though my hands trembled. "Hello?" I said. "This is Margaret Daniels. I need to cancel the venue." There was a slight pause, a hesitation, but I didn't care. I wasn't backing down. "Excuse me?" the coordinator asked, sounding confused. Cancel the venue? Are you sure? I took a breath, letting the weight of my words sink in. Yes, I'm sure. I want it all canceled. The reception, the catering, the flowers, the whole thing. It's done. She stuttered for a moment, probably trying to process what I was saying, but I didn't give her a chance to protest. I'm sorry, but this is final. You can cancel everything. I've made arrangements. Consider it a decision I've made. Thank you. I ended the call before she could say another word. The reality of what I had just done hit me like a wave. My chest tightened and my pulse quickened, but strangely, I didn't feel regret. I felt lighter. I felt free. I looked at my phone for a second, the words wedding coordinator still flashing on the screen. I didn't know what to expect, whether Emily would call me, scream at me, or show up to confront me. But I didn't care. I was done being invisible. The kitchen door swung open, and the sound of laughter and music filtered through the crack. I stood up slowly, my legs stiff, but there was a new resolve in my step. I was no longer the forgotten mother, the one who was only useful for writing checks and fixing problems. I had taken control. I walked away from the kitchen, past the staff, past the long table filled with guests who would never know what had just transpired. I wasn't part of the reception, not anymore. This time, I didn't wait to be called. I didn't need to be seen. I had already made my mark. Now, it was time for Emily to feel the weight of her own decisions. As I left the venue, I glanced back at the grand doors, the glittering chandeliers, and the carefully arranged flowers. It was beautiful, yes, but it wasn't real. It was just a facade, a beautiful house of cards that would crumble when faced with the truth. And I had just given that truth a push. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. The hotel bed felt too stiff, too foreign. I lay there, staring up at the ceiling, the sound of distant cars passing outside the window, somehow more comforting than the silence around me. My phone buzzed several times in the dark, but I ignored it. I already knew what they were going to say. Daniel's name, Emily's name, both flashing across my screen in the same way. They had started calling almost immediately after the wedding. I hadn't answered. I couldn't bring myself to face the fury in their voices yet. The thought of hearing Emily's voice, tinged with anger and confusion, made my stomach turn. This was my doing now. This was the result of the decision I'd made, and I had to see it through. The quiet hum of the hotel's air conditioner was the only sound that filled the room. It was almost peaceful, but it couldn't drown out the thoughts swirling in my mind. The truth was, I had been feeling this way for years. The sense of being overlooked, unnoticed, used. All those years of doing everything for her, of taking care of everyone else's needs, and here I was, sitting in the kitchen of my own life, unseen and ignored. I had spent decades building up a life where I was the one who made things happen, the one who made sure no one else had to worry. But somewhere along the way, I had forgotten to worry about myself. And now, Emily would learn what happens when you take someone like me for granted. She would see the consequences of her actions, of treating me like a silent, invisible force behind the scenes. She had assumed I would always be there to pick up the pieces, to cover for her when things went wrong. Well, not anymore. I knew what I had to do next. But first, I needed to feel something, to remind myself that I was still capable of feeling anything other than betrayal. I picked up my phone, scrolled through the dozens of missed calls and messages. Some from Emily, some from Daniel, some from the caterer, the florist, the band, people who had probably been left scrambling in the wake of my decision. But I didn't care. I wasn't here to save anyone anymore. The first message I opened was from Emily. Her words were tight, sharp, as if she couldn't quite process what had happened. Mom, what did you do? The venue, the flowers, everything, it's all gone. Why would you do this? I don't understand. I'm sorry if you were upset, but this is going too far. This is my wedding. Why are you trying to ruin it? I sat back, letting the words sink in. Her reaction didn't surprise me, but it still hurt. There it was, the complete disregard for my feelings. No apology, no acknowledgement of the fact that she had pushed me aside. Just an accusation, an assumption that I had ruined something that had never really been about me in the first place. I could feel the familiar ache in my chest, but this time, it was different. This time, the hurt was secondary to the realization that I was finally standing up for myself. It wasn't about punishing Emily, it was about making her face the truth of what she had done. I tossed my phone on the bedside table, ignoring the growing number of messages that flashed on the screen. I couldn't handle any more of it. I had done what I needed to do, and now it was time for her to deal with the fallout. I had hoped for more. Maybe an apology. Maybe a moment of realization where Emily would understand what she had done and how much I had given up for her. But there was none of that. Only anger, confusion, and a desire to return to the carefully curated fantasy she had created. It wasn't long before the next message came through. This one was from Daniel, my son, the one I had raised, the one who should have known better. His message was simple, but it stung all the same. Mom, seriously, what the hell is going on? The wedding is a mess. Why would you do this? Everyone is freaking out. Call me. I stared at the screen for a moment. Everyone was freaking out. Funny how they couldn't even see the mess they had made until I forced them to. Funny how it always took a crisis for people to realize they had been living in a bubble, oblivious to the sacrifices of the ones who loved them most. I hadn't expected Daniel to understand right away. He was caught up in his own world, wrapped up in his new life with Emily. But somewhere deep down, I had hoped that maybe, just maybe, he would see me. Really see me for the first time in years. But that wasn't going to happen. Not yet. Not until he realized that I was done being the one who was always there to fix things, to smooth things over. I was tired of being invisible, of being the woman who kept everything running while everyone else lived in their perfect little worlds. I had been so focused on doing the right thing for so long, on being the good mother, the good wife, the good everything. But where had that gotten me? Alone. In the kitchen, watching everyone else live the life I had imagined for myself, only to realize I had forgotten to live it. I reached for my tablet and opened up the wedding budget spreadsheet. I had kept it meticulously for the past year, tracking every cost, every adjustment, every indulgence Emily asked for. There was no escaping it. The numbers were there, in black and white. I had paid for everything, and now I was going to take that away. The cancellations were easy. They were all just a few clicks away. I started with the venue, then moved on to the caterer, then the band. The florist would be next. I canceled it all, one by one, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I wasn't going to be the silent mother anymore. I wasn't going to sit in the background and pretend everything was fine. When I hit send, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't anger that I felt. It was clarity. For the first time in a long time, I was doing something for myself, not for Emily, not for Daniel, for me. I sat back, watching the glow of the streetlights outside my window. The night was quiet, still. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was breathing again. I wasn't invisible, not anymore. Tomorrow would bring the fallout, but tonight I was free. Morning came, but sleep had eluded me. The hotel room felt sterile, cold, like a foreign place I had rented for the night. I pulled myself out of bed, the weight of my decision settling deeper into my bones as the sunlight crept through the curtains. There was no going back now. I had done it. I had taken control, but at what cost? I picked up my phone, staring at the long list of missed calls, each one a reminder of what I had done. Emily's messages were relentless, a mix of frustration and confusion. Daniel's, too, were short and to the point, demanding an explanation. I didn't need to read them to know what they said. I could already hear their voices in my head. The anger, the disbelief. It didn't matter. They needed to understand. They had to. I turned off my phone for a while, hoping the silence would bring me peace. But instead, it only brought more anxiety. My mind raced, playing out every possible conversation, every possible reaction. Would Emily cry? Would Daniel finally see me for who I was? Or would they turn on me, abandoning me as they had before? I couldn't shake the feeling that the stakes were higher now. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about the years of being taken for granted. It was about the sacrifices I had made, the love I had given, and the price I had paid for being invisible. Around noon, the first knock on my hotel room door came. It was a polite, controlled knock. Nothing urgent, but still firm. I knew who it was before I opened it. Standing on the other side was Emily's wedding planner, looking every bit the professional. Her perfectly pressed suit and confident stance made her seem like she had it all together, but the tension in her eyes betrayed her. She wasn't here for a friendly chat. She had come to fix the disaster I had caused. "Margaret," she said with a tight smile, "we need to talk. Emily's in a complete panic. The venue, everything, it's all falling apart. She needs you to fix this." I blinked, trying to collect myself. Fix it? After everything? I wasn't in the business of fixing anyone anymore. I wasn't the fixer. Not today. "Fix it?" I repeated, keeping my voice level even as my heart raced. "I've done enough fixing for a lifetime. I don't think I need to do any more." Her eyes widened. The realization that she wasn't speaking to a compliant, subservient mother who would cower at the idea of disappointing her daughter settling in. I could see the shift. She wasn't sure how to handle someone who wasn't playing by the old rules. "You don't understand," she tried again, her voice dipping into pleading. "Emily is devastated. You can't leave her like this. She's your daughter. She needs you." I stood there for a moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. She wasn't wrong. Emily did need me. But did she deserve me? Did she deserve the part of me that had been giving and loving and selfless all these years, only to be pushed aside like an inconvenience? She had everything. Every dream, every wish, every grand moment. But she had forgotten about the woman who had made it all possible. "I'm not here to fix this," I said finally, each word deliberate, controlled. "I've been fixing things for years, and look where that's gotten me. Behind the scenes, in the kitchen, invisible. No more." The wedding planner stood there, stunned, as if she couldn't comprehend what I was saying. I could tell she wanted to argue, but there was no point. The words were out now, and there was no taking them back. I stepped aside, letting her into the room, but my mind was already elsewhere. I wasn't going to be pulled back into their drama. I wasn't going to be guilted into doing the right thing, not this time. The planner continued to talk, trying to convince me to reconsider, but I tuned her out. The noise around me faded into the background, and I was left alone with my thoughts. Emily's tantrums, her arrogance, her entitled behavior, it had all come to a head. She had taken me for granted, and now it was time for her to realize just what that meant. I glanced at the clock. The wedding was only a few hours away now. Emily would soon discover that the venue wasn't just canceled, it was gone. The flowers, the music, the lavish catering, it was all gone. And in its place would be the realization that she couldn't hide behind her perfect image anymore. For the first time, I wasn't concerned about what they would think of me. I wasn't worried about being the villain in their story. I had already been the villain in my own life, playing the part of the mother who was never seen, the mother who never mattered. Now I was ready to let them see the truth. The planner finally gave up, leaving with a defeated air, and I was left alone again. The buzzing of my phone resumed, but this time I didn't even glance at it. There was nothing left to say. I had made my decision, and it was final. The truth had to come out. Emily had to face the consequences of her actions, and I had to stop pretending that I was fine being invisible. I wasn't fine, and I wasn't going to let anyone treat me like I was. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about punishment. It was about me reclaiming myself for the first time in my life. The wedding was happening, sure, but for the first time, it was without me. And that was exactly how it should be. By the time the evening arrived, I was already back at my hotel, alone. The sun had long set, and the streets outside were lined with cars and couples, hurrying to the reception. The buzz of the wedding party had reached a fever pitch, but I didn't care to hear it. I had made my decision. I wasn't there to witness the celebration, nor to be dragged back into their web of perfection. Tonight, they would learn that no one can keep taking and never giving back. I hadn't heard from Emily in hours, not since I had taken my stand, but the silence was deafening. It wasn't the kind of silence that meant peace. It was the kind of silence that meant things were unraveling, and I was the one who had set it in motion. Just as I was preparing to leave the hotel for a quiet walk to clear my mind, the phone rang again. I glanced at the screen. Emily's name. Again. I hesitated before answering. Mom? Her voice was shaky, and I could tell she had been crying. The cool composure I'd once known her for had evaporated. Where are you? What have you done? You've ruined everything. The venue, the flowers, the wedding. It's all falling apart, and you're not even here to help fix it. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the weight of her words sinking in. But the anger that had once surged in my chest now felt strangely distant. This wasn't the same Emily. This wasn't the girl who had acted like my sacrifices were her right. She was now the girl who saw the void I had left behind, the mess I had forced her to face. Emily, I said calmly, trying to keep my voice steady, it's too late for apologies. You wanted everything your way, and I let you. I've been invisible to you for years, and I'm done. This wedding was supposed to be the one thing where I could finally feel appreciated, but instead, it's just another performance. The kind where I'm the background character, the one who pays for everything but gets nothing in return. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her taking slow, ragged breaths, as though trying to absorb what I was saying. You don't understand, she whispered. You don't understand how much pressure I'm under. This wedding isn't just for me. It's for everyone, for the whole family. And you... She choked on the words, her voice breaking. You were supposed to be there. You were supposed to support me. Why would you do this? I was there, I said softly. I've always been there. But I'm done being the one who supports everyone else and gets nothing in return. I can't do that anymore. You don't want to see me, Emily. You want me to be a part of your perfect world when it suits you, but only when I'm useful. That's not how this works anymore. I've been invisible to you for too long. Her sobs on the other end made something inside me shift, but I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel the familiar tug to fix things. No, I was done fixing things. This was the moment where Emily had to face the consequences of her own actions, and she had to learn that I, too, had a voice. I don't know what you want from me, Emily said, her voice faltering. I don't know what to do now. That's the problem, I said, my voice steady. You never asked me what I wanted. You only asked me to be there when you needed me, but you never once asked if I needed anything in return. And now, here we are, and I'm not going to be your crutch anymore. I ended the call before she could respond, before I could give in to the voice in my head telling me to soften the edges, to take the blame, to apologize. I wasn't going to apologize. Not this time. I sat there for a while, my heart still racing, but it wasn't from fear. It was from relief. It felt like a weight had been lifted off me, like I had finally done something for myself. I wasn't waiting for her approval anymore. I wasn't begging for acknowledgement. I had made my decision, and there was no going back. The phone buzzed again. This time it was Daniel. His message was short and blunt. Mom, why would you do this? We're all stuck. I don't even know what to say. Please call me. I stared at the screen for a long moment, wondering if I should respond. Part of me wanted to call him, to explain myself, to make him understand. But I knew better now. This wasn't about explaining. This wasn't about being the one who made everything okay. This was about them learning that they couldn't take me for granted anymore. I set my phone down and walked over to the window. The city outside was quiet, the lights casting long shadows across the pavement. I watched as a couple walked by, laughing, holding hands. It seemed like such a simple thing, but in that moment I realized that I had forgotten how to enjoy the simplicity of life. Everything had been about them, about their needs, their expectations. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew one thing for sure. It was going to be about me. It had to be. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom. No longer bound by the expectations of a daughter who saw me as a means to an end, I could now focus on what I wanted, what I needed. I didn't have to hide behind my role as a mother who only existed to please others. The fallout would come, of course. There would be anger, resentment, confusion. But I was ready for it. I had already lived through the worst of it, being invisible, being overlooked, being taken for granted. This was different. I was finally stepping into my own life, and I wasn't turning back. The next day passed in a blur of silence, punctuated only by the occasional buzz of my phone. Emily had stopped calling, at least for now. I knew it was only a matter of time before she'd try again, but I wasn't ready to speak to her. Not yet. Not while the sting of her words still lingered in my mind. The anger I felt wasn't the kind I could easily shake off. It was a quiet, steady rage, like a simmering pot just on the edge of boiling over. I had given everything to her, and this was how it ended. Not with a thank you, not with gratitude, but with a dismissal. She had made it clear that, to her, I was just a tool to be used when convenient. A financial backer, a problem solver, someone who made things go smoothly without ever stepping into the spotlight. And the moment I tried to reclaim my own dignity, she couldn't handle it. She wanted the wedding of her dreams. Yes, but she wanted me to remain invisible in it, just as I always had been. As the evening settled in, the phone rang again. This time, I answered. There was no avoiding it. Not anymore. I couldn't hide from the reality of what I had done, nor the fact that it would change everything between us. Mom, Emily's voice came through rough, like she had been crying for hours. You have to fix this, please. You've ruined everything. The wedding is a disaster. The pleading tone in her voice tugged at my heart, but it wasn't enough to pull me back into the role I had played for so long. No longer was I the silent supporter, the one who put others before myself, the one who cleaned up the messes. That woman was gone. I didn't ruin anything, Emily, I said, my voice firm. You did. You've been so caught up in this idea of perfection, in keeping up appearances, that you forgot about the people who've been there for you your whole life. You forgot about me. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing, trying to steady herself. But this wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It wasn't just about the flowers or the venue or the cake. This was about the years I had spent quietly watching my daughter grow, only to realize that I was fading into the background, no longer needed for anything other than the checkbook. I gave you everything, I continued, the words pouring out like they had been trapped inside for so long. I paid for everything, worked for everything, but you never once stopped to ask if I was okay. You never once stopped to ask what I needed. This wedding isn't just about you, Emily, it's about me, too. I've been invisible for so long, and I'm done being that woman. I'm sorry, Mom, Emily said quietly. The words were soft, but they didn't feel genuine. They didn't feel like they came from a place of understanding. It was an apology born out of desperation, out of the need to fix the immediate crisis at hand, not the years of neglect that had led to it. You don't get it, I replied, my voice shaking just a little. It's too late for that. You can't just fix this with a sorry. You've treated me like a convenience, like I'm only here to make your life easier. Well, I'm not your backup plan anymore. The words were harsh, but they were true. And for the first time, I felt a strange sense of peace after speaking them. The hurt, the years of swallowing my feelings, of being the good mother who always did the right thing, it all started to fade. Emily's voice cracked again. "Please, Mom, I don't know what to do. I never meant for you to feel this way." But it wasn't about her intentions. It was about the impact of her actions, the subtle dismissal of my role in her life, the assumption that I would always be there, no matter how little I was acknowledged. I couldn't accept that anymore. "Look, Emily," I said, my tone softening just a little. "I'm not going to fix this for you. You have to deal with the consequences of what you've done. I'm not your safety net anymore. I'm not here to clean up your mess." There was silence on the other end, long and heavy. I could feel her grappling with the weight of my words, trying to reconcile the mother she thought she knew with the one standing before her now. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to be like this." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. I knew she didn't fully understand yet. She didn't yet realize that this was bigger than the wedding. It was about a relationship that had become transactional. It was about the way she had slowly pushed me to the sidelines, expecting me to play my part without ever acknowledging that I had a life outside of her. "I know," I said softly, "but it's time for you to learn something. You can't always have things your way. You can't always expect everyone to cater to you without seeing them, without appreciating them." The call ended shortly after, and I sat in the silence of the room, the phone still pressed against my ear. My heart ached. Yes. But there was something else. Something new, a sense of empowerment. I wasn't going to beg for my daughter's love or approval. I wasn't going to keep sacrificing myself to fit into the mold she wanted me to. I had reclaimed my power, and that was something no one could take away from me. As the night wore on, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I had taken the first step toward freedom. The next step I knew would be harder, but I was ready. Emily would learn the lesson the hard way, but it was one she needed to learn. Tomorrow would come, and with it, more questions, more fallout, more confusion. But I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. I was done being the background. I was done being the silent, invisible woman. From now on, I was going to make sure that I mattered. The next morning was quieter than I expected. There was no barrage of phone calls or messages. It seemed like everyone was still processing what had happened, trying to come to terms with the fallout from my actions. Emily hadn't called again, and neither had Daniel. The silence felt like a heavy weight, but also strangely liberating. I had no idea what the future would look like, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't undo what I had done, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. For too long, I had let myself be swallowed up by the needs and desires of others. For too long, I had played the role of the quiet, supportive mother who never asked for anything, who never said no, and who always put herself last. But no more. I spent the morning in a kind of daze, moving through the motions of my day without really feeling it. I made coffee. I opened my tablet and checked my emails, but nothing felt urgent anymore. Nothing felt pressing. The weight of the decisions I had made, the text messages and phone calls still unanswered, was no longer as overwhelming as it had once been. In fact, I felt a growing sense of calm as I sat there, sipping my coffee, looking out the window at the quiet street below. I had no illusions. I knew things with Emily and Daniel would never be the same. And maybe that was the hardest part of all. I had spent my life thinking that if I just gave enough, if I just loved enough, then things would work out. But it wasn't enough, not anymore, and I couldn't keep pretending that it was. There was a knock at my door just before noon. It was soft, hesitant. I opened it to find my cousin, Diane, standing there, a worried expression on her face. Diane had always been the one person in my life who really saw me. Not for the things I did, not for the way I sacrificed, but for who I was at my core. "Maggie," she said, her voice gentle, but there was an edge to it. "I'm so sorry. I heard about what happened. Are you okay?" I stepped aside to let her in, and as soon as she entered, she pulled me into a tight hug. I hadn't realized how badly I needed it until I felt the warmth of her embrace. She held me for a moment longer than I expected, as if she too understood that I wasn't just grieving the wedding, but everything that had led up to it. The years of quietly suffering, of giving everything for a family that never once stopped to ask what I needed. "I'm okay," I said, pulling back and wiping my eyes, though I hadn't even realized I was crying. "I'm getting there." Diane looked at me for a long moment, searching my face. "I know it's hard, Maggie, but you have to know, what you did wasn't just about the wedding. It wasn't about ruining their day. It was about you finally standing up for yourself. You've been giving, and they've been taking, and I think it finally hit you that you can't keep doing that." I nodded, my heart swelling with a mixture of relief and regret. She was right. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about everything. The way I had spent my life putting others before myself, burying my needs and desires because I thought that was what mothers were supposed to do. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. "I don't even know where to go from here," I admitted, sitting down at the small kitchen table. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make them understand." Diane sat down across from me, her expression soft but firm. "You don't have to fix anything, Maggie. You've done enough. Now it's their turn to figure it out. You've spent your whole life making sure they were okay. Now it's time to make sure you're okay. It's time for you to live for yourself." Her words hit me like a wave. Live for myself. It sounded so simple, but it felt so impossible. I had spent years living for Emily, for Daniel, for my ex-husband, for everyone else. The idea of living for myself felt foreign, like I had forgotten how to do it. But in that moment, I realized that was exactly what I needed to do. I needed to rediscover who I was, apart from being a mother, a wife, a provider. I needed to rebuild my life, not for anyone else, but for me. Diane and I talked for hours that day, going over everything that had happened, and for the first time in a long time, I felt heard. I told her about the years of sacrifice, the moments of quiet despair, and the slow realization that I had been fading into the background. And she listened. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't tell me to calm down or let it go. She just listened. And for that, I was grateful. By the time Diane left, the sun was beginning to set. I felt different, lighter. Not because the problem had been solved, not because I had fixed anything, but because I had taken the first step toward fixing myself. I spent the rest of the evening reflecting on everything. The wedding, Emily's anger, Daniel's confusion. It was all still fresh in my mind, but it didn't consume me the way it had before. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to make everyone else happy. I didn't feel like I had to carry the weight of their expectations. Tomorrow would come, and I knew there would be more questions, more calls, more fallout. But I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I had made my choice. I had drawn my line in the sand. And no matter what happened next, I wasn't going to be the one who was invisible anymore. I stood up from the couch and walked over to the window, staring out at the city below. The night was calm, peaceful even, and in that moment I realized that I had already begun the most important journey of all, the journey back to myself. For the first time in years, I felt like I was starting to live my life for me, and that was all I needed. The next few days were a blur of emotions, unanswered messages, and moments of quiet reflection. I hadn't heard from Emily or Daniel since our last conversation, and part of me wondered if they were simply letting the dust settle, hoping that if they waited long enough, I would come crawling back. But not this time. I wasn't going to make the first move, and I wasn't going to beg for their love or attention. I had spent my life doing that, and look where it had gotten me. Sitting alone in a kitchen, a woman invisible to her own family. I spent a few days considering what I really wanted. I thought about what life might look like without the constant pull of responsibility that had defined me for so long. It was scary, this idea of living for myself, but also exhilarating. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. I started doing things for me. Little things, like walking down the street to the cafe I used to visit years ago, before life became about Emily's schedule or Daniel's needs. I spent an afternoon at the bookstore, picking out novels I wanted to read without thinking of anyone else's preferences. I even signed up for a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to do, but had put off because I was always too busy doing things for other people. The world didn't stop spinning just because I was no longer the one holding it all together. In fact, life started to feel a little fuller, a little richer. The more time I spent living for myself, the clearer it became that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. Then came the inevitable. Emily called. Her voice was quieter this time, softer. "Mom, can we talk?" I took a breath before responding, my heart still aching for the daughter I had loved so fiercely, so unconditionally. "I think we need to, yes." "I don't understand what happened," she said, her voice trembling. "I never meant to push you away to make you feel like you didn't matter. I've been so caught up in everything, and I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I'm sorry, I really am." I listened to her, and for the first time, I could hear the sincerity in her words. I could feel that she was finally seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time. It wasn't enough to erase the years of pain or the way she had pushed me aside, but it was a start. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me, Emily," I said softly, but it wasn't about intention. It was about how it made me feel. Invisible, taken for granted. And I've been living that way for far too long. She was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, there was a different tone in her voice, one that was not laced with entitlement, but with humility. "I understand now. I understand how much you've given, how much you've sacrificed. I was so caught up in my own world that I never saw it. And for that, I am truly sorry." "I appreciate you saying that," I replied, my voice steady, but there was an emotion behind it that I couldn't completely suppress. "But this isn't just about a wedding or a misunderstanding. It's about me finding myself again. I've spent my whole life being the person who fixes things for everyone else, and now I have to fix myself." Emily didn't say anything for a while, and I could feel the weight of what I had just said sinking in. She wasn't used to hearing me talk this way. She wasn't used to me putting myself first, but I wasn't backing down. Not this time. "I don't know what's next," I said, my tone softening, "but I'm starting to figure it out. For the first time in a long time, I'm living for me. And I need you to understand that." "I do," Emily said, a small sob escaping her voice. "I really do. And I don't want to lose you, Mom. I want to learn how to be better. How to be the daughter you deserve." I could hear her sincerity, and I realized that this moment, this conversation, was what I had been waiting for all along. It wasn't about the wedding, the venue, or the flowers. It was about her finally understanding the cost of everything I had given, and it was about me letting go of the past, of the role I had played for so many years, and stepping into a new chapter. "I'm here, Emily," I said, the words coming out with more love than I had expected. "But I need to find my own way first. I can't be the person I used to be anymore. Not for anyone." She didn't argue. Instead, I heard the quiet understanding in her voice. "I get it, and I'll be here, whenever you're ready. I just want you to know I love you, and I'm proud of you." The conversation ended with that, the air between us heavy with the knowledge that things had changed. I wasn't sure where we would go from here, but I was willing to take that first step into the unknown, knowing that the path forward was mine to choose. Later that evening, I sat on the couch, staring out the window at the darkening sky. The weight that had been hanging over me for so long, this constant feeling of being overlooked, ignored, and undervalued, had finally started to lift. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was simply free. I reached for my phone and opened a message from Daniel. His words were simple, apologetic. He didn't ask for my forgiveness, but there was an understanding in his message that hadn't been there before. Mom, I've been thinking about everything. I get it now. I'm sorry. I didn't respond right away. There was nothing to say at that moment. I had already taken the steps I needed to take. I had already started rebuilding my life. My relationship with my children would take time to heal, but I knew that it would be on my terms now, not theirs. I put my phone down and leaned back into the cushions, feeling a strange sense of peace wash over me. I wasn't just a backdrop anymore. I wasn't just the mother who did everything for everyone else. I was me. And for the first time, that was enough. Tomorrow was a new day, and it was mine to shape. And for the first time in years, I was ready to live it for myself.